Hey everybody, welcome back to Disability Landscape. I'm your host, Charlie Brose. I'm here today with Mark Knutson, and we've got a great guest here today who got lucky. Well, I wouldn't say lucky.
No.
She won a really hard-fought election.
Yes, exactly. And Charlie and I took a coin flip, and I don't know if I won or lost because I get to try to pronounce our guest's name, and so I'm going to give it a try here. Our next guest, like Charlie was alluding to, just became elected to the City Council of Maplewood, and we'd like to welcome Nikki Villavicencio Tollison. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right.
So he didn't butcher it too terribly, so you'll continue talking to us, right?
Yeah. So, but welcome, and I know. Let's just start off talking about your you being elected to the Maplewood City Council, and why don't you tell us a little bit about that, because you ran twice. First time for 2 years ago or 4 years ago, you did not get elected on, and then this time around you did. So why don't you tell us about that, and then we'll go more into your advocacy on that.
Sure. Thanks so much, Mark, and good to see you guys. So 2 years ago was the first time I ran for Maplewood City Council. To back up a little bit before that, in 2014, I was appointed as a Maplewood Parks and Recs Commissioner, and I really enjoyed that. So I thought, hey, why not try at Maplewood City Council? You know, I'm a big believer in democracy starting at the bottom, and I think when we have all this, political messes up at the national level, that, in our backyard, in our own cities, it's something we can grasp a little bit closer. And I've worked really hard in the last 10 years on other people's races, and so I had a little bit of idea of what I was getting myself into. In the last election, I lost by 5 votes. And we had a coin toss, which I won the coin toss. Then we had a recount, and then I lost the recount by 5 votes. So it was quite the adventure. I learned a heck of a lot and met a lot of great people, and I'm looking forward to my work on the city council.
Now, if with your current position on the city council, obviously, with these local positions, that there's a lot of physically getting out there, door knocking, and a lot of physical activity, and being in an motorized wheelchair and doing the door knocking. How did you work around those types of things that a candidate has to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my first work in electoral politics was to really hone in on what we coined as accessible door knocking. And we started this years ago when Keith Ellison was first congressman of the U.S. Senate. And he gathered several disabled activists together and said, how can I reach out to individuals that are unrepresented, especially people with disabilities? And we started accessible door knocking. So what that meant is we intentionally sought out places where people with disabilities and seniors live. So obviously like apartment buildings and places like that. And then when that was successful, then we did it at the St. Paul DFL, where several of us door knocked basically every single building in St. Paul, which if you are in St. Paul, you can see there's a lot of apartment buildings. And, so once I learned those skills, and I learned how effective they were, because most political folks do not go out to those places. If you live in an apartment, so you know that traditionally those are not sought after. And so what it does is it expands the electorate. It gets more people to vote, and it's a better way of having representation. And so, if you look at any of my pictures online, you can see I go around Maplewood always with a lawn sign hooked into the top of my wheelchair.
Yep.
Which is, I think, an advantage over other candidates, because every time I'm around town, I got that lawn sign on the top of my wheelchair, like a billboard, going around town. And so,
Did you
I
get
used
stopped?
that when I did door knock.
Did you get stopped a lot then?
Obviously, my door knocking isn't. I can't hit as the same amount of doors as a able-bodied candidate, but I relied on the folks that endorsed me. They did a lot of door knocking for me. I relied on phone banking and text banking and a lot of social media. So where I could make up with the numbers of physical doors, I made up with other ways.
Okay.
Well, and we're in the midst of this lovely pandemic that is raiding on everybody's brains these days. That had to make campaigning a little different too. Not so much the face-to-face activity, but trying to reach your constituents virtually. How did that change your game plan when going into campaigning for this season?
Yeah, when the COVID started and everybody had to change the way that we do things, it was really hard for me, to be honest with you. I kind of consider myself a coffee shop organizer,
Sure.
Meaning I like to meet people at the coffee shop, because I think it's a really nice environment to talk to people in your community and just talk about things that matter to their lives. And so I wasn't able to do that. And so instead of doing that, what I did is every Friday I did yard side chats from noon to 4. And I set up a table in my front yard, and I set up social distancing measures. So I would have a chair 6 feet away from my table, and I would just sit there. And many residents came by, including some of my opponents actually came by. Other legislators came by, and we would chat about Maplewood issues. And I felt it was a really good way to engage folks on a way that made them feel comfortable.
And like you said, you started first, which is really a good idea for anyone that wants to get involved in government, is to get on one of your local subcommittees of city council. So you got involved in the city rec. In fact, my wife got involved city rec for the town we live in Jordan. So she did quite a few years, but she didn't have the ambition to take it further to run as mayor. And part of it is I don't know if I would have let her do it, but that is a really good way. And were you able to then, when you were on the city for the sports and rec, then were you able to get some things done as far as accessibility for the parks and recs?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because when I first started Parks and Recreation, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a parks background, other than liking to go to parks and being a mom who likes to take my kid to a park. I don't have any expertise in parks. But what I learned is obviously I have disability expertise and accessibility expertise. And so I really did bring those to the commission. And during my time on the commission, we actually were able to make a few different parks in Maplewood have accessible features, which is quite an amazing feat, because, like, for instance, so one of our neighbors in Maplewood is Woodbury. Woodbury has a fully beautiful, accessible playground. But guess what? It was all privately funded. And so it's a wonderful project if there are those funds available. But not every community has those funds available. So we were able to use public money, the public parks money, to make a few of our parks accessible. One of them, the one that I like the best, is Wakefield Park. And part of the reason I like Wakefield Park the most is not only is the playground like super accessible. Like I can literally chase my daughter all the way through the whole playground, but I can also go inside and go to the bathroom if I need to. It's a warming house, so that it allows for, in the wintertime when kids want to ice skate, they can have a spot to go in the bathroom, and there's entrance from inside and outside. So I was pretty successful in being able to bring accessibility features to Maplewood, but I mean, obviously we have a long way to go. It's, there's always places, walkability and trails that I feel that, we need to work on.
So as starting with the Parks and Rec Department, as on the board there, was there something in the job that you're doing there that spurred you to go further and run for the city council? And were you seeing things that you thought you could improve upon?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so being on the Parks and Recs Commission, I was able to kind of see how the city ran, what the ins and outs were, how the staff operated, and I took a lot of mental notes about that, and it definitely influenced my decision in making the decision to run for city council. I think the biggest one that I noticed is that there wasn't anybody on the city council that was like a young mom. All the women that were on the city council were women who had already raised their children. And so I felt that it's really important to have that representation of parents, and especially young parents, because, I mean, our city is so affected by, the school boards. We have actually 3 school boards in Maplewood. Wow. So it's a huge responsibility.
Wow. Okay.
And then obviously I would assume it's not like one day you woke up and decided to do all this, but to talk more, about your advocacy. And you're originally from Wisconsin, and so you came to the Twin Cities. And when you came to the Twin Cities, what was the first thing that you started? What were you doing when you came to the Twin Cities, and what got you? Did you come to the Twin Cities saying, I'm going to do advocacy, or did you first come here and then started saying, well, hey, this is something I should do? So basically, how did you get your start, Nikki?
Mark takes a while with his questions, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that all of us, including yourself, Mark, have become advocates because we have to, really. Like,
right, yep.
The services that we receive and the system that we live in and the communities we live in, it's like if we don't become advocates, we don't do so well as people with disabilities. But I came to the Twin Cities, actually, from Wisconsin, yes, because of transportation, mostly. I wanted to live in a community that I could kind of come and go when I wanted to, because living in South Central Wisconsin, there are not any city bus systems in my hometown, and the closest one was Madison, and I just felt that Madison was too close to my parents, so I didn't want to live there.
Yeah, don't blame you.
Yeah, you know how that is. And so I, felt like the Twin Cities was a great area to live in. And so when I first came to the Twin Cities, I was living with my aunt and uncle and their 4 kids. And my aunt is a nurse. And so she did my cares, my home cares. And my uncle helped as well, and all my cousins. And I was able to gain my independence by still having my family around me, which was really a privilege to have, because there's so many of us that don't have that, help. And so, yeah. And then I interned at Gillette Lifetime Clinic, which is part of Gillette Children's Hospital.
Sure.
And I did a self-advocacy project on helping Gillette patients learn how to tell their story, and then eventually going up to the Capitol and telling their story to legislators. And I worked with the consortium with citizens on disabilities with that, MNCCD as it's mostly known as. And so that's kind of how I started with my advocacy, and it just kind of ran from there. You know, you're right, you don't wake up one day and are like, I'm going to do this.
Right.
But, you know, as I noticed, right, like, first I noticed, okay, you got to tell your story, and you gotta make policymakers understand your struggle, right?
Yep.
And then you realize you want policymakers that are going to pass the bills that you want them to pass. So then that's why I started working in electoral politics, and I wanted to elect the folks that were going to pass the bills that I wanted them to pass, and which were mostly, you know, healthcare is mostly my issues that I've worked on. And then after that, I was like, after working for several legislators in their races, I was like, well, maybe somebody like my voice needs to be heard, because there is not a lot of folks with disabilities that have that disability lens that which they use in their policy making. Okay. And so that's why I felt it was important to run.
So, you know, looking back through, you went to college for broadcast journalism. You did some work in that field. Did that help you prepare for, you know, the world of politics, you know, being comfortable speaking in front of people, that type of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, I did never finish my degree, but the experience I did get in Whitewater has helped me every single day, obviously. And yeah, like, you know, doing interviews such as this,
sure.
And you know, where I think it's helped the most, honestly, is social media. You know, even before this COVID thing, because of, like you mentioned, the disparity between disabled candidates and able-bodied candidates is they have a physical advantage. Yeah. And so I knew from the beginning that using my social media was going to be an asset to me. And it has been. Like, I can reach a lot of young folks that, you know, don't watch, like, the news at nighttime and don't do those traditional things that a lot of past generations did to reach politically. But Facebook, I can get them right away. And I can interact with them. I can send them a Facebook message. Hey, did you vote yesterday? Thanks.
Yeah.
Make sure you do it. It only takes a few minutes. So that was effective.
Okay. And then also, I noticed that previously you were a legislative assistant for SEIU, the Minnesota State Council. And if I remember correctly, I think SEIU is Service Employees Industry Union. What's that?
International Union.
International Union. So what did you do there? And that definitely must have gave you quite a bit of great exposure and experience.
Oh, definitely. So SEIU, they monitor and track over 200 bills. So doing LA work for them, legislative assistant work for them, was definitely a huge learning experience, because they follow all kinds of bills, which I at that time had only really followed healthcare bills. So it was great to learn the process in different committees, and also just learn the ins and outs of dealing with legislative staff. So a lot of my job was calling up other legislative assistants that worked for senators and representatives and making meetings for my lobbyists, and then other members. So when members wanted to meet with their legislators, I would do that. I would make the meetings. And so, so just dealing with other staff and learning the ins and outs of that, and when committees, and getting, and it's quite the haul of time and information that happens all through January to May, or February to May, depending on when the legislative session is. But yeah, And it seems like every single legislative session that I've been involved in, it gets faster and faster every year, which I don't know how that happens, but it does.
The time flies when they're doing little to nothing.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's age in that too. Like as we get older, things go faster, it seems.
Yes. Now you have something in common with Mark, as you were you call yourself a former entertainer and the co-host of Birds Rascaller. What was that all about?
That caught my eye too.
Oh yeah, so you must be going through my Facebook resume page.
We do thorough research.
We've got sources. You're right.
Yeah, so Birds Rascaller is a family-run bar that my family has ran for generations and many years in Wisconsin. As you know, Wisconsin's well known for its drinking, so my mom's side of the family has a long history of bars and bowling alleys and grills and things like that we have run. In fact, my great-grandfather ran a speakeasy during the Prohibition.
Wow.
And so I spend a lot of nights doing my homework in the back of a bar.
Everybody has their skeletons. So now that you've achieved the office in the city council, will we be calling you Madam Mayor sometime soon?
No, I don't think so. It's taken it seems like I'm still trying to get over the fact that I actually won. So, I mean, I have to get into that role and work really hard to do something good for the community. So,
do you know, has anyone brought to your attention, or do you know, has anyone else been elected, to a political position who, an individual with a disability in an electric wheelchair? Has anyone, do you know of anyone in that same type of position that you are now going to be in?
If we look at like specifics around disabilities, like you said, electric wheelchair.
Yeah.
I don't think I know of anybody in an electric wheelchair per se, but there are folks with disabilities who have been elected in Minnesota. Several, like Representative Hamilton, he's in the House right now.
Okay.
Correct.
He has MS.
Yep.
And then Zerwas has a heart condition.
Okay.
Let me think. Who else do we have in Minnesota?
Well, you had.
I don't know if you guys know Rick Cardenas, but he.
I know who he is. Yep.
Yeah, he ran for county commissioner many years ago, and he was my campaign manager.
Oh,
okay.
And he learned from the great Paul Wellstone how to organize and campaigning. And so I learned a heck of a lot from Rick and would not have won if it wasn't for him, to be honest with you. Rick is a great mentor of mine. And so I would say, he'd be the closest one who probably got there. He's done a lot of great things for the state of Minnesota and especially people with disabilities.
Okay. You want?
So, Nikki, congratulations. We're up just about out of time here. I hope that you do great things for the city of Maplewood, and we hope to see you in the news frequently. Mark, take it away here.
yeah, and basically, if by chance you decide to maybe run for mayor at some time, we'd like to be the source and do the breaking news on that. But no, once again, thank you, Nikki. It was great visiting with you again, and good luck over there at the City Council for Maplewood. So for Charlie Brose and Mark Knutson, this has been Disability Landscape, and thank you.